Hi, I'm Keri Watson, and today I'm going to be talking about balancing ecosystem services and biodiversity here in Vermont. So our natural landscapes here and across the world are really important for many reasons, but for today I'm just going to group those into two different bins. The first is that these natural landscapes provide a place to live for an incredible diversity of species. But also they provide a wide range of functions that are really important to people, like providing us an opportunity to go hiking in the woods or protecting us from flooding. Generally, we call these benefits that we get from nature ecosystem services. Protecting non-human nature has been the traditional goal of conservation, but increasingly, conservation organizations are also taking into account these ecosystem services when they make decisions about which places are most important to protect. So how will that impact biodiversity? I think there's really two different ways that you could look at that. One is to say that we only have so much money to put towards conserving nature. And what ecosystem services are doing is taking a big slice out of that, and therefore presenting a trade-off for the conservation of species. But maybe this pie that we're starting with is too small for a reason. And if we start reframing the way we think about conservation to be more centered on people, we might actually be able to increase the resources available to do conservation in the first place. So what I wanted to know is, generally speaking, how much does this resource pool need to be increased in order for biodiversity to break even? To answer that question, I gathered or created statewide data sets of species distributions for different ecosystem services and the relative costs of conservation across the state. And then I used a computer modeling exercise to see, what if I had the goal of protecting 20% of all species and 40% of the habitat for those species that are either threatened or endangered? And I asked my model to say, what is the cheapest way of accomplishing this? And I got a map. I created similar maps for targeting and achieving 40% conservation of all four of those ecosystem services, and then a third for achieving both of these goals at once. Then I was able to measure the resources required to leave these places as natural lands, both in terms of area, which you see on the x-axis, but also in terms of the relative monetary cost of leaving these places natural. The green dot that you see represents the resources required for protecting biodiversity. And what I found is that protecting ecosystem services actually requires a little bit less money and less space. But most importantly, protecting both of them at once requires about 13% more money and 12% more land. So for biodiversity to break even, we need to increase our conservation resources by about this much. In a way, this does represent a trade-off. If we can't do that, then our ability to protect species other than ourselves is going to be reduced as a result of protecting these ecosystem services. But a 15% goal doesn't seem totally unreasonable. So the way that I think about this is that we're facing all kinds of really big challenges in terms of accomplishing our environmental goals. And what this indicates to me is that the particular challenge of balancing biodiversity and ecosystem services is pretty likely to be one that we can manage.